Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our third episode of Snack and Otome. We have today Alexandra, our game scenario writer on the Nochi team, and myself, Natalie, director of the games on our team. So today we are going to try something a little bit different. We are going to play Jackbox while talking about Radiant Tale because it came out recently. And if I'm correct, Alexandra, it is one of your favorite games, I believe, right? Or recently favorite games?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking because everything goes by so fast, but I'm pretty sure like I got it right around when it was released last year in around springtime. So it's been one of my favorite games that I've been able to like replay over and over again, especially a couple routes. But I'm also super happy that this is the season that new players get to enjoy it because I think it's such a fabulous little visual novel and I think it's like a perfect addition to like any collection if you want really good storytelling, and just like the aesthetics and I don't know, they're just near and dear to my heart. So
Yay!
yeah.
So hopefully we'll have a good time being able to like chat about it and like get your thoughts on what you think about the story writing, some of the elements of their design, and then we'll also give a little bit of sneak peek behind the scenes of what we've been up to. So just a few quick things. We will start sharing the Jackbox games shortly. Please feel free to jump in and play with us. We will hopefully have a good fun time. Pretty much anything goes. We'll just see how cursed the stream gets. But also feel free to drop questions in the chat anytime. We will try our best to answer all of them by the end of the stream. So without further ado, we will share the Jackbox screen right now. So the way we were running this is we're going to play Fibbage, which is a fun little sort of lying game, right, with trivia facts. Our team actually uses the other side of this Fibbage pack, which is Fibbage Enough About You, as a way to break the ice whenever we have new team members join us. And it gets pretty funny because I think, Alexandra, you have like some of the most creative fibs when we play these games. But it's a great way to get to know people.
I think it's like, yeah, I think it's such a great opportunity to like find out random facts about each other because I think that like as a group we've learned a lot of very interesting tidbits of like things that wouldn't normally come up in conversation, but I think it's like, wow, that's a talent, or you did something fun this weekend. So it's like, yeah, there's a pretty funny like you don't know what to get out of it experience.
Definitely. I think my favorite like questions that people put in or like the facts is just anything from like our childhood or like teenage years, and it's like, you did what during that time? So it's always a good time.
Like you took a class or you were part of this club and stuff like that. I'm like, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. I'm gonna post the link really quick in the chat, and then we'll just get started on one round. And if people join late, you are more than welcome to still put in the code into jackbox.tv. Type in the room code GHDW. If you type in that room code as an audience member, you can actually participate by voting as well. So you can be an active participant or choose to be a passive participant by just voting for the best answers. So we will get started right now, actually, and get things rolling. Okay. So just save everyone's ears. We did turn off the audio for the game, I believe. Hopefully people don't hear that too much. So the way it'll work is prompts will pop up on your screen. These are the players who are actively putting in lies and trying to trick all of us into picking the most possible answer to the trivia questions that they're going to post. And then we'll have a little timer you'll see on the screen. When that timer is up, make sure to put in your lie that's the most convincing to get people to vote for you. The more you get people to vote for you, the more points that you get, and then you're basically the best at fibbing your way through. Okay, so it looks like I am starting first really quick. I'm going to choose a category, and then it will pop up with a question that now everyone can put in, or answer that everyone can put in to fill that in.
Interesting.
Okay, so you can enter your lies now.
I'm like trying to think if I even remember this was a real event, but
I know some of these are just so like, is this real life that happened?
ooh. Ooh.
There's one that I want to be true so bad.
I know, right? I'm like thinking about that as well. Ooh.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good one.
Gosh.
I feel like it would have been like that makes sense to me.
Wait, what?
This was the one that I wanted to be the truth. I can't believe that is the truth. Wow.
Oh
Amazing.
my god.
I mean, you think it would be all meat because it's like, you know,
Yeah. I thought it was like a patty on patty kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Totally.
Crazy.
So I think player named Love.
There's a lot of variety.
While that's going on, while it's running, we'll try to do the talking while playing. If this ends up being too much, we'll stop and pause.
Okay.
We'll pause in between rounds later on. But okay, nope. This is going fast, so maybe not.
Yeah, it's a very it's a very quick reflex game.
Mm-hmm.
This is such an interesting one too, because it feels like something that like if you've been around the internet long enough, you're like, I would have heard about this, and yet I can't remember for the life of me.
There's definitely one that I want to be true again in this one.
That's an incredible amount of money. Like,
yeah, 14 million.
Yeah. Is that it? Oh. Okay. That is so weird, though. I'm so interested to know about the context.
That? It's like, I feel like that's
he
always
just wants to be
not...
number one.
Right, but it's like not smart because like, what if he was speeding that day and then the cop is like going to easily remember his license plate?
Oh. You're like, it's
Okay,
you're like, you just have to look for the guy with the one single digit license plate. Ooh. Because
I was gonna say, Aria, I think you put the 2. So I was like, I think someone got close probably, and yeah. And then Quest Johnson in the audience knows. If you know the reason, we'd love to know why.
Oh my god, I almost had instant regret just creating this one. Oh no.
Oh no.
I think I know what the answer is, but I don't know. I mean, these are anything goes.
Yeah. So, okay, Quest Johnson said everyone has supercars there, so their car value is based on how low the plate number is. Interesting.
Oh,
so if someone's richer, then they would like, would they go for 0? Is 0 possible? Dad saddle.
So like you
Wow.
start getting imaginary numbers at that point.
Right? Right? Can it go down to negative? Is there, can you
Yeah,
have
negative.
I don't know if you can have
Gotta have like
hyphens.
2
Maybe in
characters,
there.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you do have
yeah.
hyphens.
0 does not exist. Okay. So it's just a 1, I guess.
That's so interesting. I mean, I don't know if 1 existed as an option, right? Like, you know what? I'm gonna. I can't be a writer without challenging a little.
This is when like, so I took etymology in high school, not because of like, I mean, I was somewhat interested in it, but mostly it was like for SAT reasons.
Yeah.
And this is the time where I'm like, okay, I appreciate.
Yeah, if you break it down, you're like, yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, that's like I kind of took a similar class for that too. Oh, this is funny. Is that now? I think it's. Yeah, I was like, I
didn't enter mine in time, so that might have been.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It took me a second when I looked at the word. I was like, oh wait, and I was like, oh no.
Yep.
Sonic Dreams Collection, shout out for that one. There's some really persistent like topics in here. I'm so interested.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I'm like a phrasing in this one.
I know this would go anywhere.
You know what? Do it for the lulz. I know the answer to this because I play violin, but
you got to do it for the laughs.
Yeah, I couldn't. yeah, we had to all do it. We had to do it. Oh, wait, you know what? I am having a moment. What's that? I'm thinking, is that the right one? No, I don't think that's it. No. Yeah, no, I was like, I think I know what the answer is. Yeah.
I totally guessed. I mean, I
knew. The wrong one. Yeah, I clicked the wrong one and I looked at it and I thought, oh no, I looked at the bottom one. I was so caught
up. I like manhandled, to be honest. I wish that was true. Yeah. Like they just both had grudges and it's been forever remembered in history that they were manhandled by someone.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm like, that sounds like a really good BL somewhere that,
right?
Like, I'm, right? Yeah.
Like, I actually love the comics, like the manga comics of like Bach and like the old, like, there's some, they're pretty hot.
I mean, like, there's one that, there's like one I was reading with like Ikemen Leonardo da Vinci, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm like,
I'm all about that. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Horia said she's sure the ship exists in FGO or something. Yep. I mean, it's also an
yeah.
Right?
yeah, exactly.
These are
Yeah,
so
I feel
good.
like choosing a really silly
These
one.
are so good.
This is like a once again an anything can go because I feel like they're all
Yeah.
applicable. I think that's a lie, right? Ah, you're so good. I always keep going for your lies. I noticed that. Oh no.
I appreciated that. I feel like that'd be such a good gift, like a
Mm-hmm.
gag gift, right? Got you a candle of the bottom of despair.
Yeah,
Mom's
yeah, it's
purse.
giving like the oh my gosh. Yeah, it is really giving that energy of like when you're at like one of those joke stores or like novelty shops and you're
Mhm.
like it tastes like this or it smells like this and
Yes.
you're like
Yes.
like candy, you
Those
know.
are always fun. I'm not gonna lie though, like Birdie Bots, every flavor jelly beans, I can't do it. I love the idea of it and like it's super charming, but I will not put it in my mouth. They just know.
I've had some. Yeah, I had some ones at Universal Studios. I bought some.
Yeah.
I was it was like a couple of years ago though, and I'm pretty sure we got something that was not normal. Like there was something weird, but I'm pretty sure it's like artificially flavored, but it's just like a,
Right.
you know.
It's not pleasant. Why if I can eat candy, why am I eating that?
Yeah, it's so weird. Oh, this is so cool. God, this is such an interesting one. I'm so tempted between two particular ones. I don't think I don't think I guessed correctly, but I'm like very much invested to know if like Volkswagen is that Gap Moe as we're reading. Ah,
Oh, such a good one.
that's such a good
That's
one.
so
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Is that it?
Oh my god, no way! I was there. I
Wow!
feel like I was
Wow!
stereotype, so I didn't
I'm looking
like
this up.
it.
Yeah, I am so looking this up. Oh my gosh.
Congrats. Congrats.
Congrats! That's so good. Such a good round.
Yeah, that was hilarious. And I learned a lot. Now there's like random things that we're probably going to be looking up right after this stream. But
yeah.
yes, this is hard to chat about Radiant Tail while playing. So we're going to take a quick pause and actually chat about Radiant Tail. So, Alexandra, what are the storytelling elements about the game that you enjoy the most?
Like about Radiant Tail specifically? Mm-hmm. Like, oh my goodness. I mean, when I think about it, I mean, what first gravitated me to Radiant Tail in the first place, beyond the aesthetic, was this idea of taking the circus as a world worth exploring from like a fantasy setting. Because I think like I've always had like I grew up with like books like The Night Circus, and there was also a couple other games that kind of had a similar aesthetic like Sea Clown. And I think that part of it is because of just being able to like develop a like have that fairy tale aesthetic and those fairy tale elements, but then also being able to like transform them and make them their own in the world. And I think that's like, from a writer standpoint, I very much like am greatly inspired by that. But then at the same time, it's like I love absolutely being able to, as a player, get to sit down in a world like Radiant Tail. And I don't know, they really had a cast of characters that I think suited the world that they were working with. And then also, like, I think there's like just the fairy tale element of it. It brings out the inner coziness of the game itself, which I think it's like, I highly recommend playing and having this game in your backlog if you're especially playing like some pretty like provoking games, like thought-provoking games while you're, at the same time. Such a good quick read, and well, not quick, but like it's a lighter read.
Yeah. Definitely not quick.
It's not as quick. It's not that quick. Nope.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome though, because I feel like that sort of segues into Nochi a little bit, because our upcoming game, Sweetcore, has that little bit of like fantasy aspect. Not so much like fairy tale, but like hopefully people
Yeah, yeah.
see little semblances of what they might enjoy in Radiant Tale and that maybe they'll enjoy in Sweetcore. Like, what do you think people will enjoy the most out of Sweetcore if they did enjoy Radiant Tale?
Well, it's kind of interesting because like you just said like about fantasy, and one of the interesting things is like with fantasy is like there's different tiers. Like there's low fantasy, which is like more of the magic realism, which is closer to what Sweetcore is like there's magic existing in a very like modern setting. But then you also have like the high fantasy and going into like the medieval fantasy, like Harry Potter esque, pushing. I think some of the other like spin offs for that, and then you have Radiant Tale, which I think is like set in a completely like specific world, catered to like have magic exist in a certain way. And what's interesting about it is like with Sweetcore, even though it doesn't have a world that is set in that kind of space, there is still like from a research and like storytelling development standpoint, there's a lot like we as like a team and then in the story writing take from high fantasy concepts, and then we sort of find like a blend of those things to incorporate. And like without getting into episode, like any kind of like spoilers, but like a lot of the inspiration that you see coming from like some of the episodes, especially in the demo, they started out as like cool concepts and things that I found interesting in fairy tales, and I wanted to be able to blend them in and add that like fusion into the real world. And I think that's what makes like adds it's the like brings Millie's world come to life. And it just actually like the intention is to really spark that whimsy and see like our own inner magic in the everyday world that we live in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Now, I guess on the flip side, what are things that you didn't like about Radiant Tale in terms of story writing, world building, character development, things like that?
I think sometimes for me, and I think this could be like a personal thing, but with Radiant Tale, I felt, and this is like, once again, it's like debatably, it has a very long common root. And I think that to some people, they want to get to that, like me and the love interest moments. And it does take a little bit to get there, maybe more so than other games. I personally see the strength in some stories having that. I think we've done that and experimented with that, like with Sifting Time as well. And there's so many opportunities to create camaraderie, but at the same time, it can come at the cost of that balance of being able to then like have the separate like root really mean something or have the same impact. And then also like obviously when it comes to some of those roots, it's like you're very limited to not getting to incorporate as many of the other characters and some of the existing camaraderie that you had in the common root. So it does almost create like a departure from that, and it really is such a challenge because like we said with Sifting Time, working on that, we had to like really ask ourselves some questions, about how we love seeing the boys together, but how do we also push this like romance aspect. And I think with that, sometimes in some ways with that in the fairy tale elements like of the story, like the specific story roots, you don't get as much of the romance in as maybe you might be hoping. So I kind of like, I think that's a subjective thing. I personally still like it because I like heartwarming elements, but I could see like it's not offering probably that spicy zinger vibe that maybe some people might be more inclined towards.
Okay, so that sounded like it's like there's pros and cons to it, right? So did you like the way they treated the common root, or did you feel like they could have been decreased a little bit, or like maybe at least keep the elements of it? Because I thought it was interesting, like you sort of wanted to meet each of them because it made sense at the end once you finally get to the end of the game, right? But like maybe you a different treatment of it, cutting it down a little bit more. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I almost feel like I enjoyed it where I was like, I personally wouldn't cut it down because I think I see the value and the charm of it, of what, I mean, like even from like our own development standpoint, when we're choosing scenarios of what to write, sometimes there is like scenes where you just get a really good kick out of seeing all the characters together. and there is like a certain ease that comes with it, versus I think when there is like you and the character, there is, especially in Otome games, that expectation of like, is this moment going to lead me to the next beat towards romance? And I feel like I necessarily, like I said, I personally wouldn't have cut it down, because I can still see the value of like like a theme of an Otome game isn't always just selling you specifically hardcore romance. I think it's like able to also sell you a sense of community as well, and a sense of belonging. And I think that, like games like Mystic Messenger have also kind of set that in the sphere. And then you have Radiant Tail, which I think it's like, it's a circus troupe. Like, wouldn't you want to have that opportunity to be able to kind of explore the angle, as well as like getting into the nitty gritty of each of the characters' backstories? So I personally
Yeah.
think that it's correct, especially with some of the harder, like, like the heart wrenching moments of the specific romances.
Totally, totally. Arya made a comment or posted a comment just now that she enjoys the balance of private romantic moments, but while also having fun with the rest of the cast. And it's sad
Mhm.
in some Voltage games that sometimes it's only with the LI. And I think that's super interesting and paired with what you just said, because in a lot of these games, and like even for our games, like there's so much world building, right? Like the first example, Somnium
Mhm.
11, it's not reality, so we mixed in a little bit of magic in there, magic tech, but it's also a little bit of
Mhm.
reality. So that camaraderie, I think, really helps to immerse you in that world, right? Versus for Voltage
Yeah.
games,
Same with
this is
Atlas. Yeah.
yeah, with Atlas, like in order
Mhm.
to understand this, fellow station work style vibe and know your coworkers and like what is this world? And we always get that question, I feel like, because it is a different style game. Like we do tend to drop people right in and like we want you to experience what it's like living in this world. Versus
Yeah.
Voltage, it's like, it's high school life or like teacher life, like things that like is more familiar. So I think
Mhm.
they probably don't tend to do as much camaraderie because of that, and it's just like get straight to the romance versus I think like
More stimulation, I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly versus I think it was important Radiant Tail to sort of understand like all these different like cities, right? And like the spirits and like the magic elements and everything. But
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think like it's interesting that you mentioned that. Like I mean Atlas is such a big example of like from my end of the process. Like I really took a lot of inspiration from like the workplace comedies, and like the really thinking about like anime and series and things that I really enjoyed seeing a cast. And when you have like you said, it's like there is that fine balance of being able to like have the cast, but then being able to get that private moment in. And there was, I think with specifically with Atlas, it was this in dissection of what the idea of simulation really is, right? It's that, does it necessarily mean that you have to create just scenes with just you and the love interest only to really experience that angle? Or can you really expand it to be able to like have this sense of like part of being in an explorer setting and in an expedition setting is being able to work with other people and build your character from there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think it adds to it, right? Like you feel more invested when
Mm-hmm.
you know like who else is in here. Because like in reality, it's not like you and a
Yeah.
significant other, you have friends, you have all these like hilarious
Yeah.
life moments. But yeah, in terms of like simulation, like the process of interviewing people, thinking about real life relationships. And for us, like one of our Kickstarter experiences for Untold Atlas is we actually had backers simulate the group chat. We used like a whole Discord and everyone took on a role. And like when they took on a role, we role played for like 10-20 minutes to role play the idea of, okay, you're part of fellow station. Like if you are a nurse, role play the nurse, this other person's
Yeah.
gonna role play something else. And so it's like
Yeah.
we do try to do our research and simulate as much as possible of like what it would be like. And so hopefully people can dive into that world a little bit more fluidly.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something I do love about Radiant Tail. And I think that kind of segues a little bit into like uh, having a good cast of characters, I think helps like can only be rounded by having a really good MC. And personally
Mhm.
for me, I think that is earlier you asked me like what was the biggest one of the draws for like me playing Radiant Tail. I absolutely love Tifalia. Like she is such a sweet character, and I think she has such conviction. And I think if you've played like any of our like Nochi games, you know that it's like something we value in our heroines is like being able to have conviction and have a lot of courage, and like really be able to get a sense from her words, her monologues, that she feels very deeply and strongly about the things she believes in. And so, yeah, I think that is probably one of the big points, and why it's able to be highlighted in her romance aspects, but then also in that like cast, those common root moments that she really gets to explore the circus.
For sure. I think what else is interesting that I appreciate about this title is I see some parallelisms with our titles is that you get a very different version of her depending on which route you end up getting to. Like she's still strong, she has her essence, but there's times where she's like, you know what, I'm gonna support their mission versus like she's driving it and being like the one that's being active, right? Like as in like what's his name? The Ion, is that his name? His route.
Yeah.
That's
or like
a very yeah. So, and I appreciate that because your life can change very drastically based off of life decisions you make or people you're with, and like the people you're with does influence
dynamic.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I'm really excited for people to see in Sweetcore too, because the way that it's been developed with Zero and Kingsley, like Millie is a badass girl, but what a different type of Millie too. Each of them, right? Like, what are you most looking forward to with Zero's version of Millie versus Kingsley's version of Millie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually been one of the most fun parts about being able to have multiple roots and then being able to play with her character quite a bit. Because I think like part of it, I mean, you know, like seeing other MCs like like Tafadia, it's like that is what really is a key inspiration of like I really wanted Millie to be able to like grow with those characters, to get that sense that you're like, you know what, she's got her own, like she can handle these two very, very strong personalities. Because I think that as a joke, like I think we've joked about it before, like in real life, I don't know if I would be able to keep my cool sometimes with some of the things these like two do.
Yeah, no, but it makes it super fun that way. I mean, like that's part of the fantasy aspect, right? Yeah. We also did get a question I want to make sure that we covered offline. We got a question before the stream, and it is asking about our process, or the process that you use to write. So specifically, what software do you use, and what type of document do you use for writing?
Okay. I mean, so I mostly have done a mixture of like Google Docs and Word, because I think we've used the Google Docs as a way to make it very accessible between me and the developer, between me and the editor. So that is a really good option, and it's free. So it's definitely something that can be like you can collaborate with or work on your own. Also, I do use Microsoft Word. I've just been using it for scripts and documents. On occasion, we have used Final Draft, which is a script writing tool as well, and that I think has been used in a couple of projects like Somnium 11, or when we were developing Untold Atlas, the storyboard. And then I've used other apps like Muse as like boards for like idea boards, Pinterest, things like that, for being able to sort of keep. I'm a very visual person, so I love to keep like kind of mood board, like experience to just have on the side when I'm working on the process, and also be able to keep certain references on hand. But I would say Microsoft Word is my friend. But once again, Google Docs is also
we're a Google company.
I would say like a script writer. Yeah, you wouldn't need too much to just get your ideas down, and then slowly, as a team, we work with being able to create a correct format so that things can be imported properly, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that question was also in the context of like a personal like project, like wanting to develop, or also from like a company perspective, from a
Mm,
dev perspective, if they are trying to get into the industry. I think what you said was super helpful, but then also from a perspective of if you're trying to work with a studio or with a company, a lot of times it's also just based off of the company's processes, and then you can use
yes,
whatever like tool is best for your workflow, and then eventually
yes,
converting it over to the company's like requirements and how they want to see things, because maybe it's
yes.
easier for their workflow, or maybe it has something to do with our tech stack. For us in particular, Alexandra does tons of awesome research and organization of information, like all the brainstorming, and then at the end of the day, like Alexandra mentioned, we are a Google company, or we use a lot of Google tools. So Google Docs is like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
final
yeah.
we use, and then everyone on the team uses Google. We also started using Notion recently for Sweetcore Brews, which we
Hmm.
didn't use for our prior.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
We used a little bit of Notion and Untold Atlas, but we're actually constantly pretty open to changing tools and processes, because new things are always developing out there.
yeah. Hmm.
When there's new products out, like, we do keep an eye out on it and see, okay, what's
Hmm.
industry standard. And if it's not an industry standard thing, like, maybe it's really helpful for our workflow, because we're still pretty small and nimble as a team,
Hmm.
since we're only like 3 people, right? So that also is a factor into like deciding what tools we end up using.
Yeah, very much
um,
so. Yeah, Notion is a really good shout out because I think we've been able to catalog a lot of story writing and collaborative like checklists that we need for making sure that we, cover all the different elements and story things that we need to have in the game.
So we have a follow-up was, thanks for the info. I was wondering if you use audio visual format scripts.
Uh, in terms of, I think I might need specifics. And like, are we saying like in a spec script, like would we include audio and visual, or maybe I'm misunderstanding the question?
I think I have a pre-submitted version. I think the full question is, if you use a screenwriting software, do you use audio visual scripts,
Mm.
virtual reality scripts, or screenplay scripts? So I guess the first question is,
Oh, oh, oh,
you
oh.
use a
Okay.
screenwriting software, Alexandra,
Yes,
in your,
screenplay. Yeah,
and then if
yeah.
you
So yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we kind of use like a modified, like kind of like what Natalie was saying. You definitely want to like when you're getting into script writing, it's kind of like we use a slightly modified version of like a spec script for like film and TV. We do omit things that we obviously don't need because it is a visual novel format, but that is a really good place, and it helps with organizing information. In terms of audio and visual things that we add, not necessarily like that we do include, but I think we will include any other additional aids in like separate channels if we're describing things or doing things that requires us. But I think when we implement them, that's also on a development end of things, and we'll just make notes about where things need to be inserted.
yeah. And again, that's like very much our workflow, because this is like our fourth game. So we've developed something that is efficient, I guess, between all the different teams. And like, we do have interns that come on board as well. So we have like best practice documentation of like, hey, this is what we're doing, because this is the process we've developed to make things really fast on our end.
Yeah.
Now, if you were asking us like way back when for sifting time of how things looked, I mean, it still looks different. It looks different from sifting time scripts to now what it is for Sweetcore Brews. It is something that we do talk about early on, saying like, okay, hey, we have all these systems in place, we have all these tools in place, but with this new title that we're developing, is there anything that we need to tweak about this process? Is there a new level of information that we need to include to make sure that we can develop the game really fast? At the end of the day, I
Yeah.
think what really drives the decision is, one, is it something that is accessible to all team members, no matter what role you are, whether it's, just reviewing, whether it's passing it off to external people to review for like sensitivity screenings, things like that, or as a developer, Alexander rereading, I'm reading, whatever. And then also at the end of the day, is it fast for our team to implement? And so we usually do something in the beginning where we meet up in person for 2 weeks straight every single day. We do take a break for weekends, but usually we hang out on the weekends too, and we do something
Boot camp
fun.
all the way.
Yeah, like we'll go out for sushi, or like for Sweetcore Brews boot camp, we went out and did a baking class together, and so it was sort of like on theme with like scones and teas and everything. And during those 2 weeks boot camps, we really laid down like everything that's needed for development, and like, okay, this script format worked before, but what else do we need to add into this, or like, do we need to take something out because it was too slow from the prior process for Untold Atlas compared to Sweetcore.
New game features. Yeah, new game features is like the big one.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah. Hope that answers the question. I appreciate the question.
Let's see. Okay, so I guess I have a question going back to Radiant Tail. And again, chat, please feel free to pop in any other questions. We're happy to answer. So for Radiant Tail, which character's development did you enjoy the most?
Okay, so it's kind of hard for me to like pick one, because I think for me Vilio is like was the reason why I got into it, and I personally enjoy the fact that he has to be saved best for last. And I feel like debatably some people might find his like hitting the beats, but I personally think I loved him the most. And it sort of brought me back to a character like Ryder from Untold Atlas. When I was working on him, there was such a clear-cut intention in my mind of it being such a familiar character. Like, you've seen this character in anime kind of vibe, but there's just something charming about that. And I feel like he kind of embodied that heart and spirit for me. I also think that I liked elements of Zakura's character as well. So I loved, I don't know, I think I just kind of like, I mean, who doesn't love the clown? Like, I don't know, I just had like a soft spot for him.
What about him in particular, though, like, made you, so the clown aspect, but like anything in particular in terms of like personality, or like,
I think it's a little bit of the Gatmoe as well. I think it's the Gatmoe aspect of him. Like, I don't know, sometimes there's characters that I also feel that, like, and this is something we've done a lot with other, like, games as well, too. It's, it's the character that you think it's going to take a while to love MC. Like, it's the character that you're like, oh, I might have to put some effort into, like, I don't know, he's a bit of a challenge. And when I went in, that was kind of my precursor to it. But then when the payoff comes in, it's much more like, like, I don't know, it's just, there's this feeling of like, oh, okay, now I feel like, it's not worth it. Versus, like, I feel like Vilio, for example, it's like, you kind of know where it's going. But, like I said, I think that's the beauty of playing games with, like, multiple routes. It's like, and I feel like that is something we're currently exploring with Sweetcore Brews, because you have two different types of romancing styles from the different love interests. And I think that is very, like, parallel to that.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask the difficult question then. Who are you most excited about for Sweetcore Brews? Because I'm curious to see if there's like elements of like your Radiant Tail preferences showing through.
Oh no, you're asking me the forbidden question. Oh no. Because we have this ongoing joke that it's like, I have to love everyone the exact same. Like, I cannot. But, each of them have their own special things. For Kingsley is I don't know. I enjoy, like, rustling my own, like, senses sometimes whenever I'm trying to work with him. Like, I enjoy that aspect, because I think, like, we've joked about this too. It's like, I kind of grew up with, like, Jane Austen novels and the Mr. Darcy, like, S-type. So I think, like, going in with Kingsley was like, how do we create, like, magical Mr. Darcy, like, kind of element to it? And like, taking elements even from, like, characters like Alexi and Leo from Sifting Time, and being like, how do we explore that? Then, I don't know, Zero is the complete opposite. I feel like Zero is just like a ball of fun and energy, and I think putting a semblance of that chaos, or that sort of like trickster god element to her, is like, I have fun. I can't pick.
Yeah.
You've given me a bad question.
No, you love all the children equally. I'm not that person on the team. So but yeah, no,
I
it's
mean,
interesting because
yeah.
you mentioned Alexi and Leo, right? And they are
Hmm.
some of our more
Yeah.
popular characters, I would say, in terms of like
Yeah,
sale
yeah,
numbers.
yeah.
Um
Yeah.
but like we didn't go into that intentionally with Kingsley, I would say. Like it just sort of happened very like it just
Yeah.
made sense that his character was born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were developing him, it was pretty clear cut what we wanted to do. And I think, yeah, we
Mhm.
had talked about character elements. I mean, we also talked a little bit about like we love Titus from Somnium
Yeah.
11, and I think it was very interesting. I mean, going into any project, right? You're really thinking about like what do I love about these roots, and what do we feel like people could enjoy out of these roots? And I think with Kingsley, it's like it's always like with any kind of game, and as someone who like played a lot of Mystic Messenger, like it's like the ones that you have to put a little bit of like you gotta grind against basically is always going to be very very fun. And likewise, I think by having that like with Kingsley, it made it just as fun to be able to go in and like think of not quite the opposite, but like a whole different process for Zero, because I think that one of the things we really want is to give Zero like her very own experience, like way to like engage with Millie. And so,
For sure.
yeah, I don't think we would have that without knowing what the dichotomy of these two are.
Yeah, and I love that we're exploring both of them because I think hopefully people will see
Mm-hmm.
elements of again like realistic relationships ish minus the magic,
Mm-hmm.
right? But just like sort of like what you see
Yeah,
in real life right now. And I think
rom
that's
com.
something that like
Yeah,
we've always done in all of our games. Like in Somnium, we
yeah.
really took a page out of like what we're seeing in reality TV or just like celebrity,
Yeah.
culture. Until Atlas,
Like
we
Olympics.
interviewed
Yeah, Olympics fan fiction.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in Untold Atlas, we interviewed like veterans, right? And like you had a military friend. I
Mhm.
sat down with like my military friends and like
Yeah.
we combined all these like real life experiences to make something
Huh. Yeah.
fantastical, right? Like so there's
Yeah.
fantasy and romance, but like
Movies
hopefully you
both.
see
Yeah.
snippets of reality in there. But we
Yeah.
are coming up. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I think the greatest thing I ever learned as a writer, who like started out really be like, oh, you want to write fantasy? Is some of the best fantasies always rooted by like taking from the elements of reality and really finding the whimsy in them. And I think that's what
Mhm.
we kind of went in with this game and every game that we've been doing, really. So if
Yeah.
that's like writer's advice right there.
Yeah.
Don't forsake in paying attention to the things, like the little things in life.
Yeah, that inspires you, right? That inspires like
Mm-hmm.
everything's based off of reality in some aspect. But we are coming up on time and we are going to go into like our spiel that we do for our episodes. And since
Okay.
Alexandra, this is your first time on the
Yeah.
podcast, we have to ask,
Yeah.
what is your favorite work snack?
I think it's like not very creative, but it's a classic. We love popcorn. It's such a desk friendly, like don't eat at your desk kind of thing, but it's like you know what, if you want to have something that kind of keeps you sustained in between, popcorn and hydration are like my two things, and lots of tea.
Super, I feel
Very
like that's super
aptly.
good of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. It doesn't need to be creative. It's good. It's good and it's tasty, and that's all that
Mm-hmm.
matters. And it sustains you through the
Yeah.
long writing sessions.
Yep.
Awesome. And let's see. Let me check if there's anything else from chat. Otherwise, we're really excited that we were able to play Jackbox games with you guys. We are still sort of tweaking the format a little bit. We've learned today that it's a little bit hard to chat at the same time with Jackbox. So we will try something else a little bit different. But we hope you enjoyed hearing the little snippets about like behind the scenes stuff behind what goes on in our games, and then also just hearing the thoughts of Radiant Tale. Alexandra is one of Alexandra's favorite games. And you'll definitely see more of us and hopefully more behind the scenes in future episodes.
Yeah.
But really quickly, before we go, we just want to do a quick shout out that in the description of the podcast episode, there are socials if you're interested in following us to keep up to date. We also do have a Ko-Fi membership where you can actually get more behind the scenes stuff and interaction with our team with like exclusive Discord channels and everything. And we do have a Sweetcore Brews pre-order store up. So if you're interested in that and you missed out on the Kickstarter, you can take advantage of that as well. And very soon, very, very, very soon this month, Untold Atlas will be releasing on Steam. It is our studio's first Steam title, so we are very excited to be able to offer that to players. But other than that, thank you so much for spending your evening with us and talking about Radiant Tale Jackbox games and hearing about the behind the scenes of how our studio operates. But thank you, everyone. Until the next episode. Bye.
Bye.